Hello viewers, welcome back. We are now looking at the preferred model layout. Preferred model layout. So we have walked through the model design process, starting from the outputs and back solving all the way through the inputs. And that gives us a great structure so that we can understand this linear flow all the way through the financial model and get the right level of detail. But now we want to talk about the idea of prioritizing all of the schedules from a communication perspective. We want to be able to present the financial model or the financial schedules in the right order to the audience. It makes sense for us to present the schedules in a logical and linear order. From the inputs through to the outputs. It would make sense, but that's not necessarily the best from the perspective of the audience. Now here we are looking at the presentation. It would be better if we are presenting from output to input, but from the presentation or the audience's perspective, because the audience is going to be maybe our stakeholders, maybe the public, maybe the government. So we look at what is the interest of the stakeholder and we present our financial model in that manner or in that perspective. So we are trying to focus on the communication, as in we are trying to present to the different stakeholders what is our preferred layout. And that's what the communication perspective is all about. So let's think about what each stakeholder wants or what they need. The first thing that we are always going to lead on in the presentation perspective is, by default, is that one tab that we call cover. The cover. And what we put on there is what we call a cover page. Now, it's definitely going to include the basic information. We are going to get the basic information. The basic information, like maybe the date. We may have the date, name of the business, it would be name of the business or the company. And it could also contain some legal disclaimers. Legal disclaimers. And at some point you may find some model alerts. Just like the way you can set an alarm, we may have some alerts. But more importantly, this cover page is really setting the stage, or it is setting the pace for the financial model. The reason why we are putting all these aspects there is because we are setting a pace, we are creating a stage, we are providing an environment on what we are going to be presenting. So it is all about letting the audience know that what we have formatted is actually efficiently a financial presentation. So that's basically what we shall look at as far as the cover page is concerned. So one thing to remember, it sets a pace. Now, the next thing that these high level decision makers are going to be looking for is effectively the conclusion. The conclusion. So let's not wait until the end of the presentation that will bring the real conclusion of our financial model. So let's give these decision makers what they need right away within a nice, clear dashboard. So the only way we are going to give these guys what they need is by providing the outputs. So the outputs are going to be in a clear, nice dashboard that is showing the decision makers all of the outputs that they are looking for. And these outputs, they are the ones that are coming out of they are the outcomes of our financial model. So once they have seen those critical outputs, then the next logical thing to show are the inputs. And these inputs, the reason why we show the inputs, because it is these inputs that led to our outputs that we presented in the dashboard. So it is those inputs that led to those outputs that we've presented. So in our case, it will be the things like the drivers. So there will be the model drivers. There would be things like the weighted average cost of capital and all other remaining model inputs as we've provided them. Even though we have a few tables here, because you are seeing here we have a few tables. But here we have just put a small number of the modules, all the model schedules. We consider this to be the most important point of presentation. You are seeing the whole of this box here. We have very few items, 1, 2, 3. But those are the ones that we consider to be very important. As far as presentation is concerned. So, what we have shown the audience is a quick cover page, We have shown them the outputs, and then we have shown them the inputs. So we've shown them the inputs that led to these outputs. So in fact, for a lot of members in the audience, this is all they need. And it is the only information for them they are looking for, or what they want to see as far as our models are concerned. And some of them, they are actually aware of what is coming out of the financial model. And they are even aware of everything that drove the financial model, or that is driving the financial models. Also, if they are comfortable with the model building abilities of the person they hired to construct their models, they may not need actually to look any further for these appendices to actually have to see the revenue costs, the cash flows and the DCFs. They may not actually go into seeing those other values, if at all they trust the person that developed the model. But now for those that may be a little bit more curious as to how the connections and the calculations work between the inputs, because someone is going to be wondering, how are these inputs connect to the outputs that we've seen. So those that are going to be furious, they are the ones that are going to ask for these appendices. So the appendix will actually be there to show the different schedules that we use to drive from the inputs to the outputs, the necessary computations and the connections that we've made. So that's why we put appendices. And what we are going to include in that tab is we are going to include the model itself. So inside the model tab, we are going to have a large number of schedules that are going to drive, that are going to be deriving all the calculations, starting from the revenue, the costs, the working capital, depreciation, asset schedule, income tax schedules, all those different items, they are going to be within the model. So we move from cover, output, then inputs, then here we shall have the model itself. Now this module is the appendices or the appendix that will have all those aspects that we have, the revenue schedule, because that's where we are going to be getting all the different things that we have that are leading to those. So that's where we are going to have all the hard work and all the formulas inside the model. So some of you may think that the section over here, this section here for appendices, is the most important, because those that are building the models, they are going to think that this is the most important area, because it is upon them. This is where they spend most of their time doing the computations. For them, they are going to see that this one is the most important area. Because they are the ones that it's where they are going to spend most of their time. Because you have to make sure that all the computations are perfect. So here for you, the person, the model builder, you will have good integrity through all these modules schedules. But the audience is going to concentrate over on this left-hand side, this side alone. So what they want to understand, the audience, they want to understand the inputs, the outputs, and how we have come to a conclusion. Now, another way to think about how we have divided up this model is using an analogy of, let's say, an automobile. Let's just use maybe an automobile industry. So everything that you are seeing on this left hand side here, let's assume, because the left hand side is where we have the presentation here. the things to do with the dashboard, the things to do with the cover. Let's just assume that this is where all the controls and the dials are. And it is where you are going to focus when you need an instant feedback or when you need to get instant feedback. And when you look at this right hand side here for the appendix, so for this appendix is essentially like the engine. This is the part of the model which you don't always need to go into, and if you are working at a higher level within the organization, you may not ever need to look under that perspective. What you are going to do, you are going to focus on the dashboards and what that dashboard is actually telling you, because the dashboard will actually have the conclusion. So this dashboard will actually give you the conclusion. So I hope now you can see how we've prioritized things that we need to look at from the communication perspective or from the presentation perspective to the audience. And it is so important. So the model needs to be able to communicate all its findings through to the stakeholders. There's a difference between stakeholders and shareholders. Shareholders are the guys that own, these are the owners. But stakeholders has very many people, customers, suppliers, employees, public. There are so many people. Even shareholders, they are part of stakeholders because they have an interest in the business. So the financial model has to actually communicate all its findings through to the to the stakeholders and the decision makers. You can also see from the discussion that we approach things in a very modular fashion, just from what we've discussed. So in the next video, we are going to talk about constructing models in a modular ways and utilizing these building blocks to save you time in the build process. So we'll see you in the next video as we are looking at the building blocks. So for those who haven't subscribed, kindly subscribe to the channel because there are so many that is coming in. Make sure you hit the notification button so that you can be notified whenever we upload new videos. And don't forget to share to your colleagues, friends, and families so that they can also benefit or they get the same knowledge that you have received from the same tutorial. Thank you.